right, I'll call this meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Board of Ethics to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
Yes, Ms. Wynn Pearson,
Here.
Mr. Goodstein, Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Mogadam, and Mr. Teagarden.
Here.
Future, you have a call.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as drafted?
Move. Second?
All right, I support that as well, so that we move forward with the agenda as drafted. On to minutes of the previous meeting. The members need a moment to review, or are we ready to entertain a motion on the minutes of the board's meeting from July 13th? I actually might need a moment. All right. Do I have any motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second?
I support that as well, so the minutes are approved. On to the consent agenda. And I know I need a moment to review the disclosures of economic interest that we have in the packet. So let's take a minute and look at those.
I'm Jessica Smith. I see they're a board member, but doesn't tell what board.
Yeah, she's missing. I think that one we're gonna need to send back.
Okay.
Gabriel Ashland here. Plan Commission. Be attached. Got it. All right, we ready to discuss? Just review. So I think you're right, Patrick. I think that Ms. Smith needs to go back to her because it's not clear what board or commission she, or authority or LRSA she is going to be serving. I had a question about Mr. Hess's, both because he didn't specify whether he has any interest in any municipal contracts or not. And also because I wasn't aware that we allowed municipal employees to also coterminously serve on boards. Am I misremembering that code restriction?
I know for the
Is he new to AERC or has he been on there for a long
he's
time?
been on there for a long time.
Okay, so maybe
Yes.
it's different for AERC.
Yeah,
I just feel like we came up with this previously with like a planner who wanted to be on the planning board or something like that.
There are some restrictions on certain boards that prohibit contemporaneous municipal employment, but not for the AERC. And Daryl's been in that position on the AERC for like almost over 7 years.
Okay, got it. He still hasn't checked whether he has any interest in municipal contracts or not.
It's true. And that's funny. He was very he was telling me about his efforts that he was pleased with himself for getting other AERC board members to file disclosures. So it's like, yeah, you actually have to
You have
check
to
them
fill it
out.
out. Any other issues or items for discussion, questions about the disclosures?
No, I don't. That Daryl's was the only one.
I think that is it.
Okay. Do I have a motion then too? It sounds like we're ready to send Mr. Hess's and Ms. Smith's back for completion of the form, but otherwise willing to approve.
So moved.
I support that as well. So we're through the consent agenda and on to unfinished business. Because we have Mr. before this already, I would suggest maybe we consider a motion to change the order of the day and talk with him about, he has 2 agenda items. I believe number 7A, request for ethics training, where we thought we'd ask you some questions on what you're looking for. And then number 6C, which is Mr. Thornley's request for advisory opinion. So if the board is amenable, I would suggest a motion to change the order of the day while we have Mr. Buffo, and then we can move. Our next guest, I believe, will be ready in about 8 minutes. So we might be able to knock out to be efficient in the use of our time.
So move.
Second?
I approve that as well. All right, let's go on. Maybe we start with the easy one and talk to us about your request for ethics training and what you're looking for.
It's not so much ethics training as it is kind of like a review of conflict of interest
Okay.
type issues. Yeah, and the reason behind it is there are 2 members of the Port Commission. I'm doing this partially at the request of Chris Constant. 2 members of the Port Commission. One of them is a longshoreman who works for the contract that Matson has with the local longshore workers, but he's on the Port Commission, and he does a fair amount of advocating for Matson, as a consequence of that, and at a couple of assembly work sessions as well. And I think Mr. Constant got concerned that here's a guy on the Port Commission who's advocating for one of the port users and not doing the same for any of the other ones.
Is he identifying himself as speaking on behalf of the Port Commission in any way when he does this kind of testimony? Or is he
He's speaking on behalf of himself.
Okay. Got
Yes.
it.
Yeah. The other one, I have a port commissioner who is an employee of Marathon Petroleum. Right? And Marathon Petroleum is, again, one of the port users. And because the only real substantive thing that the Port Commission does is they are the ones who review the port's recommendations for what has to be done to our tariff, and then they, if they agree and approve it, then it doesn't go into force. It goes from the Port Commission to the Assembly for final approval. But this is a person who's on the Port Commission who's making a decision about tariffs we're going to charge his company, right? And so those 2 have kind of raised the flag a little bit about whether or not maybe there's a need to kind of do a not pointed education session with the commission about what conflicts of interest are, and when you should recuse yourself and when you should not, and those kinds of things, because it's been pretty loosey-goosey for the 16 years I've been at the port. I have never had a situation where we've had a representative of a company that works at the port on the Port Commission, and we've done a pretty good job of avoiding having that happen. But this one, I can't, I can give my opinion, but I'm not making these appointments, right? So that was the my kind of maybe we can very subtly give people an opportunity to appreciate the rock and hard place they sometimes put us in, because of what their interests are, that could lead others to believe that they're not as above board as they could otherwise be.
Okay. I mean, that definitely sounds like something that we've done various versions. I'm looking at Terry because he's done a lot of ethics training with Assembly and with. I mean, I think it's a problem that like the Planning and Zoning Commission frequently runs into because there's often people who are developers or real estate salespeople or contractors or whatever on the board. So.
And the way we would do this is we just make it a new business item on a Port Commission meeting and set the time aside for that.
Is it possible for you to maybe give a few dates to one of the staff members for the board and we can figure out a date that works for us to the next few days?
I can tell you for sure the next Port Commission meeting is going to be on Wednesday, September 27th. And that's the one I can give you because at every Port Commission meeting they vote on when the date of the next one's going to be.
Oh, got it.
So that's, we try to do them every other month on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. But, the closer we get to winter, the higher the likelihood that'll be successful. But now it's been sort of, we've been moving it around a bit.
Okay,
Yeah, but I know 27th September for sure.
got it. So, and then third Wednesday of the month going forward.
So if they have one in September, the next one would be the third Wednesday in November.
Oh, it's every
Every
other
other
month.
Every other month.
Oh, got
Yeah,
it.
it's every other
November.
month.
Okay. Terry, you want to look at your calendar and see if that works? I can look at mine too. My term ends in October, so I will probably not be here in November.
Oh, okay, right.
But I will. Could co-sponsor
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you
something on
remind me of
27th.
the day in November that would be?
Well, what we'll do is we'll suggest to them to keep it the third Wednesday of November, whatever
Okay.
that number is. And then they'll all look at their calendars and go, nah, I can't make that one, but I can go this way. Yeah,
That's
so.
the
That's
20.
fine.
Yeah, we've had the same.
Do you know how that
here.
works?
The same challenge
Yeah.
here. We're
Yeah.
endeavoring to get past that. It looks like the 15th of November is the third Wednesday, and the next Wednesday is the night before Thanksgiving. So I would anticipate
So we probably
you
won't
wouldn't
have
move
a
it to the
meeting.
22nd.
Yeah,
So you think it might be the 15th?
yeah.
Would that be? Is it better
Yeah,
if you
I
got
could do
November?
the
I may
15th,
still
yeah.
get to be serving then, in which case I would help you, or else I'll observe from afar.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can tend to say we can plan on being present at the November meeting if you can keep the board apprised of
I
what-
will do that,
what
yes,
the
thank you.
date that
I'll
is.
just put that on my comments for their next meeting.
Okay, right.
Okay, so that takes care of item 7A.
Which was the simpler of the two, I think.
Yes, we
Yeah.
go back to item 6C, which is Mr. Thornley's request for an advisory opinion, request 2023-01. And I believe here confidentiality has been waived correctly.
Yeah, that's-
Yes, so we continue to discuss this on the record. So we had asked you to come just to give us additional background from your perspective
Sure.
on this request. I assume are you familiar with the request?
I am because, well, frankly, I wrote it.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. All right.
Yeah. Again, this was at the request of Assemblymember Constant.
Okay.
Yeah. Whether he's as concerned about it now as
Mm-hmm.
he was at the time remains to be seen. But
Okay.
I think it's laid out pretty clearly what the what the issue could be.
I'll take a moment to refresh my recollection. I think part of it may be just helpful for us to, if you maybe explain it to us again. I think I know we've been reading it this myself. I'm like, all right, we've got a
Okay.
DOR and a PAMP and a GHG and
And
WSP.
the EIAIO.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So here's I'll do my best.
Okay.
So Dr. Thornley
Yeah.
is on the Geotechnical Advisory Commission.
Yes. And what's the purview of the Geotechnical Advisory Commission? What do
well-
they advise on? I mean,
Okay, they're for the municipality, so it's not just all about the port.
okay, so
It's all
beyond the
about
port.
all
Okay.
things geotechnical for the port. They are occasionally called to review the design criteria that different projects that are, construction projects for the municipality are undergoing. And to take a look at the geotechnical implications of that. Where are you going to build it? Is the ground solid enough? Are there going to be issues with respect to seismic concerns and those kinds of things? Do you have the designs that have been submitted sufficiently mitigate the risks for those kinds of things? That's what the GAC does. They will tell you they're not writing the standard. They are interpreting the standard against what they've been asked to review for the municipality.
And is there a review, maybe this might be a question for council, or either one of you, is there a review, are they sort of like a quasi-judicial board, like they actually review and they sign off as required, they're not just advisory? No, they're just advisory.
They're just
So
advisory.
they say, we suggest that perhaps
Exactly.
this is not sufficient and the port will fall
Exactly.
down when there's an
Yeah.
earthquake, or we think in this
Yeah.
instance your design is sufficient.
Exactly.
Okay, but
And
you can still proceed even if they,
Well, yeah, you'd like
against their advice.
You'd
if you-
like to think you could.
Okay,
But then the issue becomes, there are assembly members who will hang on their every word, and now it's gospel.
Okay.
And those kinds of situations occasionally present themselves. We've found ourselves in that conundrum with the design of the new cargo docks. And the issue here is, while Dr. Thornley is on the GAC, he is also the lead geotechnical engineer for the designer of record for the cargo docks at the port. And he is
So
also
he's effectively reviewing his own designs. No?
there's no mandatory GAC review of anything.
Okay.
Right? But I know that our program management office, will ask for the GAC to take a look at what we have preliminarily designed, and they may ask them to review what we're doing progressively as we advance the design from 30% to something that you can build construction.
Oh, so it
documents
hasn't
with.
yet gone before the geotechnical advisory board, the design for the new cargo docks.
The concept for the cargo docks has,
Okay.
with respect to the seismic standards for it. All right, and that's really what their interaction with us has been, that the GAC has been, is we have established what we think is necessary seismic standards so that when we build this thing with a 70-year design life, it's not going to fall in the water the day after you cut the ribbon. That depending upon what what Mother Nature throws at us earthquake-wise, it will be standing when it's over. There's a whole book published that has what seismic standards are, and our designers that we've hired will use that, and then as part of the due diligence process, we give it to the GAC to get a look at to make sure nobody missed something that should have been missed. So he has that role, but he is also and he's recused himself.
Oh, he's recused himself.
He has recused
So when it
himself.
went to the Geotechnical Advisory Commission.
Yeah. Well,
The concept,
I think
he
what
was
he did,
recused himself. Okay.
he raised the conflict, right? That he thought he had a conflict, and they ruled he did not.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
They ruled he did not, but he recused himself
Yeah.
anyway.
but these kinds of interactions are going to continue to happen because the cargo dock design, we've been given the go-ahead for the first of 2 cargo docks. That design's at 30% now. It's in the process of being advanced to 65%. So there can conceivably be let's go back to them one more time for another review. But he is also on the design team for that. I think if he was here, he would tell you he had no problem recusing himself.
Yeah, we're going to talk to him in a little bit.
Yeah. And but he is also on the same company, GHD, who's working 2 projects that are ongoing now down at the port. There's the design of the cargo docks, and then there's some land stabilization work that's
Wait, he
happening.
works
out
for
at the north end.
GHD or WSP?
Oh, I'm sorry, WSP.
Okay,
You're
just
right,
making sure
WSP.
that he
My
didn't
bad.
work for both
Yeah,
companies. Okay.
WSP. WSP happens to be involved with 2 different contracts we got going on down there now with different partner companies. Yeah, GHD on the cargo docks, Manson on the work going on out at the north end. Yeah, so I would like the peace of mind of knowing that, and I trust him. I know he's smart enough to have found himself in this situation God knows how many times, and that's what happens when you work for a local construction company. Is he's asked to have himself recused, and sometimes they'll do it, and sometimes they'll go, you don't have a conflict, and he's been allowed to do what he would do.
Can you tell me, because I'm not an engineer, so if he's the geotechnical engineer of record, like what is the relationship between what he's doing in that role and what actually comes before him? Like, is it really that he's stamping, is he stamping plans that are then being reviewed by the Geotechnical Advisory Commission?
You'll have to ask him that, Becky.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not
Alright.
sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. My gut tells me, yeah.
Okay.
But he'll be upfront with you about that.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Kelly?
I know he's not going to get any financial gain out of this.
Yeah.
His company got the contract already. That's done.
But if the board said this is insufficient, like these plans are dangerous,
Mhm.
wouldn't it mean that his company would then have to go back
Go back
and
and
change
change
them, which would cost them money?
That would cost money.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that feels like a pretty direct financial interest.
Yeah.
Mr. Kelly, Mr. Teagarden, do you have questions? I know I've talked a lot.
I got one. First off, how big is the GAC board? How many people are on the board?
I think there's 7. I think there's 7. 5 or
And
7.
Would it
I've only been to a couple of meetings. My role is not to interact with these guys on a regular basis. We have an engineer on staff who does.
Would it be correct in assuming that a person on the board, probably everybody on the board, is either a geotechnical engineer or an engineer of some type?
They're all geotechnical.
They're all geotechnical. So in other words, if you're a geotechnical engineer, you have a potential of being in the same position
For some other contract.
for some other contract anywhere out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
pretty fair.
When he's making these disclosures, is he asking the board to consider whether he has a
Yes,
conflict, or is he in fact asking to be recused? So in other words, is he
yeah,
saying I
and-
in fact have a substantial
Good question.
conflict?
How it got worded, I wasn't there, but I do know that it, at a previous meeting where he asked to be recused for this kind of thing, it was addressed at one of the board meetings. It's probably in their minutes somewhere, but my understanding was they ruled that he did not have a conflict. He was the president of the chair of the GAC. He stepped down from that. Right. Yeah. That would have made it probably even more complicated.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I
That wasn't helpful at all, was it?
No, this was actually, suddenly it made sense to me, actually. I apologize for making you tell me the story verbally, even though it's written down. I just got lost in the acronym. So that was actually very helpful too. Thank you so
That's
much.
okay. That's the life we live sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah.
understood. Sometimes the law is all.
Well, I'm glad he's coming down because, yeah.
So I think that's all we have for you. We'll
Okay.
plan on the November date for training, and we'll talk to Mr. Thornley, and then should have an opinion set on that.
Okay,
Relatively soon.
great. Thank you.
All right. Thank
I
you so much.
appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Likewise. Okay.
All right.
Should we finish this matter then?
We might as well,
Mr.
right?
Thornley? Hi. Yeah, let's just finish this matter then, and we can proceed accordingly. Hello.
How are you?
Thanks for being with us. I'm Becky Wynn Pearson, Chair of the Municipality of Anchorage Board of Ethics. These are all of the other members introduce themselves.
Patrick Teagarden.
Terry Kelly, thanks for coming.
Paul Earnsty, one of the legal counsel.
Okay. Megan Berger, I'm communicating with your Chronicle Legal Counsel.
We need to update your name tag.
Yeah.
Note to the clerk's office. So we just talked to Mr. Rubifo, so we have a little bit of more background from him on your request for an advisory opinion, but we wanted to have the chance to ask you some additional questions and clarifying points. None of us are engineers, so some of us was helping to understand exactly the role, scope, and interplay of the various bodies at issue here. So I guess I would maybe ask you to frame the request in your own words, just to help us kind of hear it for the third time and hear it from your perspective about where you see potential conflicts and how you've seen the facts play out so far.
Sure. So I guess the question at hand is with respect to my involvement as a GAC member related to the request from the Port of Alaska for an opinion from the GAC to evaluate design parameters or design codes that would be used for the construction of Terminal 1 and potentially Terminal 2. And so I've been on the commission for I don't know, since 2009, and have been involved primarily as chair of that commission over the years. But let's see, in 2014 I was just vice chair, and so we dealt with this issue in 2014, and then subsequent to that, the Port of Alaska came and asked for a reevaluation of that.
In 2014, were all the facts the same? You were the engineer of record for the project?
No,
no.
at that
you were
time
not.
I was not.
Okay, so you were working for WSP, but you were not the
Right.
engineer
Well,
of
Golder at that time, but we were subsequently purchased by WSP.
record. Okay, so dealt with in 14, you were not the engineer of record, and so you did not recuse yourself or ask for recusal from
That's
that
correct.
exhibition.
Yep.
Okay.
So then it came up again, and I believe at the time, WST was in negotiations with the Port of Alaska on Terminal 1 work. And so at that time, staff provided a series of questions and a procedure to follow. We followed the procedure, which meant that I stepped aside as chair and just became, somebody who presented, my involvement in the issue, and the vice chair then took the discussion over, right? And what was discussed or what was described or discussed at that time was, what are the impacts of my involvement as a GAC member versus what are the benefits that my company may get or I may get personally by my involvement. And at the end of the day, to be perfectly honest, the decision whether the GAC moved to change the resolution or not, or change the resolution that we've done in 2014 or not, really comes down to changing a number on a spreadsheet for calculations, right? So there's no real benefit one way or the other to myself or WSP, and so that was a discussion that was had during that meeting. That there's no financial benefit that could come from the decision one way or the other. However, what we wanted to do was make sure that nobody felt that because oftentimes just the appearance is enough to make it seem like it may not be correct. And so what we did is I stepped aside as the person guiding the conversation. The vice chair became the lead of the discussions during those times, and then I was just a member of the GAC. I did not draft the letter or the resolution as well, right? Even though it has this is something I think is kind of funny, is that it has my name on there, but I didn't sign it. You'll notice that the signature is otherwise. I think it seems kind of like you'd have somebody else sign it or have their name on there. But hey, that's your business, not mine, as far as the municipality goes. So basically, I stepped aside as somebody leading the discussion and just participate in the discussion. I don't think. I think that one kind of piece to this, as well as is this historical perspective. A lot of the commissioners are fairly new to the positions, and so providing that historical guidance and perspective was something that I probably did more than say, hey, you should change it this year, nay. So I think that would be part of the record as well if you went back through that. So
I had two questions that
Sure.
came up for me when we talked to Mr. Buffon. I wanted to ask you. First was, explain to me what the geotechnical engineer of record does for a project. Like, are you stamping? Is it plans
so I'm
that are
stamping a set
then
of plans.
reviewed by the GAC, and they are then saying, okay, yes, we sign off on this thing that you have then stamped as being sufficient to meet engineering standards?
It could be that.
Okay.
Typically, what it is I'm the one who stamps the drawings. The work is done under my guidance and direction. I have a staff of about 17 people who are working on the different aspects of the design right now, and so what happens is I review all of their work and so on and so forth, and at the end of the day, then I stamp the drawings and the reports and the other guidance documents. That may or may not ever go to the GAC. In some instances, say when we're building in seismic hazard zone 4 and 5, primarily downtown, and that there is a clause in the amendments to the local code that would allow that for building safety to say take that and put it in front of the GAC. This I don't believe is one of those cases. So I'll never get to see my work from a GAC hat for the Port of Alaska Terminal 1 project.
Okay. And then my other question was, I had asked a hypothetical of Steve, was if you stamped plans or signed off on a component of the project and it comes to the Geotechnical Advisory Commission, and the commission says, no, this is terrible, this is insufficient, it's seismically unsafe. would that not cost WSP more money because it would go back? I presume at that point, if the assembly chooses to follow the recommendations of GAC, the project goes back to WSP for further engineering, redrawing, something that you would then have to do. Like, would that not be a financial if there may not be financial gain to the company,
Right.
but is there not financial detriment that could be imposed by virtue of the actions of the GAC?
I mean, it could potentially. I mean, there's this is a lump sum project,
Yeah.
and so there is the potential that if there was a redesign component, whether it's driven by the GAC or by the owner or the owner's rep or what have you, that's burden that is carried by WSP. But I would say that's the nature of pretty much every lump sum project.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
So,
Just is a factor in terms of looking at the factors in the code.
Sure.
We look at both, financial gain and also financial detriment that
Right.
that could potentially come from being in a role where you're signing off on approving or not approving something.
And
that your
and
company
and
has
if it
designed.
if it did go to the GAC, like let's just say that this design was kicked up by building safety to go to the GAC, at that point I would totally recuse myself. Right, I'd be there to answer questions and present the issues at hand. But it's a different aspect than providing guidance to the Port of Alaska on considerations for going into the design. I actually do see those as slightly different beasts because one is you're defining the ground rules for playing the game, if you will, the code that you're going to follow and those kinds of things. But in the other, now my work is getting evaluated by my peers. And so they're I would say they're different, but
Maybe clarify that more. So you're
Sure.
saying that the Geotechnical Advisory Commission has a role in defining the standards before the project is, or setting the standards for project design before the project is designed, right?
Right.
Conceiving of it
Yeah.
correctly. So you have kind of two roles. One
Yeah.
is providing proactive advice. Is that before the project is put out for bid?
that's
or
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that at that point, WSP is one of 7 companies that might theoretically bid on the
Exactly.
project.
Yep.
But then after you have won the bid, then you would be stamping plans that would come back to the GAC
Right.
hypothetically for review, and there you're reviewing specifically and signing off on specifically work that WSP has done.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood. I didn't realize there were the twofold review. Okay.
So and those are the kind of different aspects that the GAC does play. We're part of planning. The GAC is works under the planning department, and so one of the goals is to be proactive with is this a good place or not to build? Are there things that we should be doing? Even downtown here, the GAC has recommended different building requirements within downtown. Nobody's adopted those, so here we are. But we provide commentary on things that people should be thinking about before we build. And then building safety can also then bring in a project and say, hey, we want you to take a look at this. So there are two different roles. I would argue.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, Mr. Teagarden, questions?
I just wanted to ask, in these cases where you asked them to review your potential conflict, did you ask them if you had a conflict, or did you ask to be recused from the matter?
As far as this specific issue, so the way that the forum typically goes for a GAC meeting is we call to order, and then the first point on the business is, are there disclosures, right? And so there's business that's on the agenda, and we seek to make sure that if there's anybody that has a disclosure to make on anything that's part of the agenda, that they do so then. And then the order, actually, it's not me asking to recuse myself. It's the process. If there's a disclosure to be made, that person steps aside. Next person, somebody then leads the discussion as to whether or not that person should recuse themselves or be involved in the conversation.
Okay.
So it's not really me asking to recuse myself.
Got it.
It's that in my case where I'm the chair, the vice chair then takes the meeting over and starts the series of questions.
So you disclosed this interest and its potential conflict, and
Right.
then you let the body. So what did not happen, which would, as you can imagine, the appearance alone would be pretty bad, right? Saying like, I think I should be recused because I have a substantial conflict of interest, and then the board basically overruled you,
Right.
and forced
It
you
says now you have to speak.
to participate,
Right,
which the assembly, which elected official bodies do, and the code's actually silent on that. We've over the years tended to read the code as allowing at least board and commission members the right to recuse themselves
Sure.
if they in fact believe they would be violating the
Right.
code by participating in the matter. But
Right.
that's not what happened in this case.
Yeah.
You just sort of like, hey, I've got this interest. Please,
That's correct.
review it.
Yeah.
You did rightly step off as chair, right, and then didn't participate in the deliberation about
That's
your
correct.
interest.
Yeah.
And then
I answered questions,
Yeah.
but did not vote or did not
deliberate, right?
Right.
Okay. And I'm sorry, not your
Right.
and in your view, at least for these particular cases, you didn't see any significant downstream effect for your company.
No, I did not. Yeah, and the GAC is a free position. It's volunteer, position. At the end of the day, the role, that I play in my company, there's expectations on me that I, keep their best interests out of trouble, right? So you do think about that, and you could argue the other way that I'm in it to win it, right? But in this case, I really don't see there. I struggle to see as an engineer, on the table of values, how you could come up with any other sum other than that this is somewhat irrelevant to financial gain. So
I just want to make sure I'm clear on what you stepped aside from. Did you step aside from the actual vote on the change to the 2014 approval, or just from the portion of the meeting where the conflict was discussed, the existence or absence of the conflict was discussed?
yeah, so I'll be maybe I can rephrase or re-explain. So the 2014 resolution was in the past.
Yeah, so that was, but I understood
Yeah.
it was like the issue came up again recently, right?
Yes,
So it was,
yeah.
that was what prompted the question about the conflict, because
Yeah.
now you are serving as the geotechnical engineer of record for WSB, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you flagged the
and
conflict,
essentially
yeah.
what really spurred this was that the code that the port is applying down there. There's been a change in the language of the code, and so they asked the port asked the GAC, hey, you guys weighed in on this in 2014. We've got a new flavor of the code now, and so what do you think? Can we change our would we change our recommendations as the GAC for that? And so. That time I was not a party to anything going on down there, but this time I was. And so in that meeting, I stepped aside as chair.
And that's for the process of the conflict disclosure, right? So you
Yeah.
disclosed the conflict, and rightly, like, they picked a different chair to consider that, and they deliberated, and then they said no conflict. And then did you participate in the vote on the new, the reconsideration under the new code provision? Or
Yeah.
did
So
you-
the outcome of the disclosure discussion and the conflict of interest discussion was that I could participate as a member of the GAC,
Yeah.
but I would not lead the discussion.
Okay,
And then I would not write the resolution. And I
Okay.
would, and so
so do you guys vote formally on the contents of a resolution? So you
Right.
would vote.
so I
and-
would participate in the discussion of the development of the resolution,
And you vote on the
and
resolution?
I'd vote yea or nay on
Okay.
the resolution
Got it.
itself.
Got it, okay.
So. I think it's important to note too that I think, as I recall, the resolution was approved unanimously. So it wasn't like hinging on my involvement one way or the other.
Are there any other people in GAC from WSP?
No.
Are there any companies that have multiple people that are employees or that are on the GAC?
That are on the GAC? No, not that I'm aware of.
And I think, Becky, but at no point, you're not at any point reviewing, stamping off on your own work. Is that right?
I guess I'm trying to.
Are you reviewing and approving
Oh, from a
designs
GAC
that-
perspective?
yeah, that.
Well, yeah, maybe
from
that's
a
up to,
GAC.
Yeah.
what is the thing that came forward again? Like, I think I'm having a hard time understanding, like, what came before the board for the resolution and vote that is the revisitation of the 2014? Was that plans or was that?
No, so yeah, and this is
Calculations.
really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
I think that this is a critical piece. So I don't know. Are you familiar with International Building Code?
Mhm.
Right. So we'll use the International Building Code because there's a Ports and Harbors Code that was the point in question. But you know we have local amendments to the Building Code, and the GAC actually participates in you know the revisions of those things. So this was essentially a code level discussion. Here's the code that we want to follow. GAC, do you agree with the adoption of all of that code, or do you think that you know there are parts that should be changed? And so it's the code rather than a design or a.
The board, the GAC was not reviewing
work.
plans,
They were not
or
reviewing any
they
work.
were reviewing a request from WSP.
No, from
No.
from the Port of Alaska.
From the Port of Alaska.
Otherwise, yeah, there would be a terrible conflict of interest if
Okay.
I was the one coming to the GAC saying, "Hey, would you review this modification?" And I think that's an important kind of
Okay.
distinction here is that the port actually, even before WSP was working with the port, or before WSP was working with the port. They were already in talks with the Geotech Advisory Commission to evaluate this new code, and so like you know we were already talking about this the GAC and the Port of Alaska. We were already having discussions about this new code, new flavor of the code, if you will, before WSP was involved contractually with the Port of Alaska. And so it really is the framework or the rules of the game that you're kind of defining in that role, not a design per se. So.
And in the case of the ports and harbors, like I know that the local amendments to the building code are basically codified in Title 23 of the
Right.
municipal code. Are local amendments to the ports and harbors code also codified in a title of municipal
No.
code?
And this was a big problem. I mean, this is
that's the issue.
part of
That's
the
why
reason
there's
why
a-
the port has had such a
Okay.
sordid past, is that there was never really a guiding document.
Mhm.
And this is the reason why in 2014 they approached the GAC with ASC 6114 at the time and said, "Hey, we want to follow this guideline. There's nothing in the Muni Code that directs us for
Which guideline
this
to
type
follow?
of discussion
So
because
this is
IBC is not applicable."
So this is the port coming and saying, we'd like to follow whatever standard we'd like to follow. Is that okay? And
That's right.
was the port making that request because that was what was recommended in any way by WSP?
Oh no!
No, okay.
No, it was by the port management program. So Jacobs now CH2M back in the day.
Okay.
So CH2M recommended to the port, "Hey, we think you guys should follow this code." And then the GAC was approached to then evaluate whether we thought that was a good idea in 2014 and 2015 to do so. And then ASC 61 was updated, or is in the process of being updated. So Jacobs now said, "Hey, we should adopt this change in code." They pushed it up to the port. The port pushed it to the GAC. Now comes the tricky business of WSP's in conversation with the port about potentially being the designer of record. But they're rather than design plans, because in that case, if it was a design or plans or something that I had personally developed, that would be a conflict, and there would be really no discussion. It would be hey, I'm now here at the GAC today to talk about this design, and I would be asked to not vote on actions.
If WSP already has this contract, so hypothetical, on a lump sum basis, right? Is there I do know the building code relatively well. I know like the building code, certain local amendments make things cheaper or make things more expensive, right, for builders. So is there an argument that by agreeing to is this a standard, like a local amendment that could have made the project more or less expensive to complete, depending on whether it was adopted?
That was the hope of the port.
That would make it less expensive to complete.
Yeah, that was the desire of.
Would it make
port.
it less expensive for WSP to do its portion of the
No.
work? No, your work
Because
would
again,
still cost
it's
the
changing
same.
a single number on a spreadsheet that then drives calculations for stress and strain. You know, what ends up happening is you either specify more or less steel in the section, and really it.
And WSP doesn't have to buy the steel.
Right,
they
we're
just
not
put
selling
it in there.
steel. We're not.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have interest in building
Okay.
construction materials, so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Okay, that is now officially all of my questions. Terry, Patrick,
I'm good.
others? Okay, I think that's all we've got. Thank you for
All right.
coming in to talk with us. We're a volunteer board as well, so it takes us a little bit of time to move, but we should hopefully have some written advice in response to your request probably within the next month, I would say, or so.
Okay.
All
Great.
right,
Yeah.
thanks much.
Yeah. Let me know if you need anything else. So,
Hey, thanks for your time.
yeah, you bet.
All right.
Yeah, we don't even get sandwiches anymore.
I know.
Hint,
They're
hint.
amazing.
So in terms of the order of the day, I know we have Ms. Jones, I think, available to speak with us regarding item 6A on the phone, right? And she's already available. And then we have Mr. Thurn slated to come at 2:30, followed by Mr. Rivera at 3. So my suggestion would be potentially, that we go through all of our testimony and then after all our testimony is done, since we're slated to meet till 4:30, go back through for deliberation. Because otherwise we go into deliberation now and we push the stack of people back who are waiting to speak with us further.
We also
into the
have one
afternoon.
other potential person to interview as well. I can't remember which confidential matter it's in regard. I don't know which it's regards to, but there's another person. I'm just hesitant to say his name, but
Which item is it?
just trying to think. Okay, I'll look at the confidential packet. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there that there's also one other person that we
Just let me know what the
By
item is so
phone.
I should be able to figure out
Yeah.
which person we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. We interviewed them last.
Oh, okay, cool. You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
we're just waiting
Okay.
for
All right, never mind then.
respondent, I think.
Okay,
I can't do this
excellent.
today.
Okay.
So-
Thank you.
What is the will of the body? Would you like to move to deliberative session to discuss item 6C now? Or should we move ahead with all of our various testimony and then revert to deliberation at the conclusion of the meeting?
I would say we would, if the testimony is available, we take it when it's available.
Okay, are the board members
Versus
comfortable with
making
that?
somebody wait.
I think so. Yeah, I don't like that as a practice.
I don't
Generally,
either,
it's
but
always
we
best to
have
have the
so
discussion
many-
right. I know,
yeah,
but
we
we
have-
should knock them out, and then unless let's just maybe
Do we,
keep in our pocket the possibility that if we get one, we're like, whoa, we should really talk about this right now while it's fresh in our mind. But generally, I think it's a good strategy. We've got all these people lined up. Let's at least get their testimony, and then we can be flexible. in
okay,
terms
this
of-
one I feel is pretty relatively
I didn't see
straightforward.
anything giving me a lot of heartburn about this one.
Do we want to take it quickly then, or do we end deliberation?
Patrick, did you have any heartburn about this one?
I think that,
What's the, well, actually, this one we can consider on the record, right, because it is,
yeah,
it's,
It's
yeah, we don't have to, so let's talk about this one quickly. I mean, my thinking was, I didn't see any issue with what happened because of how it was described, but I think he needs, that the opinion should have language in it cautioning him that financial impact that could create a conflict should also include detrimental financial impact to WSP, that if there's something that makes the project more expensive for them, that is sufficient to create a conflict, and thus he should be recused. So whatever, that whatever the externality of future decisions, that they should consider that factor. That would be my cautionary advice, but I felt like the situation as described, the facts that he put on the record did not indicate a potential for that or anything else that would to me indicate a conflict, and that he followed the code as directed in terms of disclosing the facts to his body and adhering to the ruling of the chair or the ruling of the body with a different chair. So that was my thoughts in a nutshell. I don't know if you're nodding, it seems like you agree, yeah.
So the one thing I have is that, the perception, what if, I'll give you an example, the bridge that fell at the university in Florida a while back, and after something happens of a major thing like this, what is the hindsight 2020 look at it, and how does it look? Let's just say this project went through and something went wrong, and then what is the, then when you really look at this closely, does the perception cause an issue for the municipality and that right there? And there's really no benefit to be gained by him voting on it, because it's basically the only thing he's doing that I had a heartburn was the fact that he was voting when it really didn't seem to matter. And I would just go over and say that just out of the out of caution in that right there, if there is when you do have that type of a potential conflict, they went over and they had it so he wasn't leading the discussion and he wasn't writing the report, but I think that the idea of voting might be something that might also need to be done, just to protect the municipality and the overall appearance in the worst case scenario.
Unfortunately, the code doesn't let him, the code says that the potential appearance of conflict is insufficient to create an actual conflict of interest, and we are charged with following the code.
It's true.
So while I may, okay, got it, only available until 2:30. All right, so we need to wrap quickly because our next next written is only available until 2:30. I would agree that I think we could include language that says you're encouraged, you to consider, broadly what the potential conflict would be, but unfortunately I don't think that the code as written allows us to recommend that appearance be sufficient to create.
Well, there is a conflict. He has a private interest that is being affected.
It is.
That is potentially, that has the potential to be affected by this public position.
In future decisions, I think yes, but I think that's the crux of it is there a potential, this particular decision, because it's not an across the board thing, he has to look at the decision, and with the way he described it, their decision had no impact on his personal interest. It could, absolutely. I think it's that the decision that they made had caused WSP to spend more money on a lump sum project, that absolutely, that's a direct financial interest, and then he's out. But I think absent that, it unfortunately doesn't meet the criteria of the code. But I don't know.
So I think in this case, we should pause deliberation on this one and do it later. Yeah, I thought
Okay.
it would be quick and easy, but if we have, and I actually have some things
Yeah.
that I think maybe we should put some chips on the ground. This issue about recusal, about whether people can recuse themselves or whether a board or commission can force them to participate in the matter. There's a few lines that I see in the code that actually are the first time I've ever seen them. They were not, I don't think they were in the draft that Dee showed us. So they may have been added during a work session or something like that. Again, at least our rulings in the past have typically said that people, at least like for this board, for instance, that if someone says, I need to recuse myself.
But I know there's a long history right behind the previous framework, which was like you don't really get to recuse yourself if the board directs you to participate. And I think that's back to some controversial votes that the assembly was asked to take during election season, and people wanted to find a reason to be recused because it was convenient to not have to vote. And so the code then was framed to direct you to participate so that you could have sufficient.
And so either
I agree,
we
maybe
should put
let's
some
table.
chips on the ground, or
Okay.
we should make a recommendation for a code change, because I don't think that rule should apply to boards and commissions. I can see, I don't quite agree with it, but I see the logic of that for elected bodies.
Yeah.
I don't think I think if a board member says, I've got a substantial conflict, that's the end of the story. I don't want to talk about the appearance.
I agree.
A board then, imagine if you had said that,
yeah.
I've got a conflict, my company is going to be directly affected, and the board just makes a lousy
Well, I think
analysis
we
and says,
have-
you know something? No, we don't think you've got a conflict, and you must participate and must vote.
I agree
on
we should
this.
discuss this because we talked about this previously with respect to Ms. Wilson, right? Where we said that if a board member says, I don't think I can, or I don't think that I can participate objectively in this matter, then we've considered that to be sufficient to say that a conflict absolutely exists. In Mr. Thornley's case, he did not say that. He thought he could participate, but he could in the future say, I don't think I can participate, and I think that is grounds for you to
But
be
I think
able to
it might be a chip marker for this one, because we might say in the opinion, in the future, if something comes up that does directly affect WSB,
Okay.
you should recuse yourself, and then maybe we should lay
All
out
right,
that.
we
thing
need
with
to
it.
get to item 6A, and I think, Mr. Thurn, we may need to ask you to come back in a little bit. I apologize.
What time would you like me to come?
I know you're here in the building, so we thought maybe you could ask that of you. Let's see, we have our next person. Do we think we can realistically, what's your afternoon look like? Could we ask you to come back at like 3:30, or is that
I have
too
to be
late?
gone by 4, so as
Okay.
long as.
I think our questions for you are relatively brief, so I think, does that work for the board? Because then we could have them at the end of all our lists and hopefully not.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Be
you.
exhausted by then.
My apologies. We will
Alright.
keep our questioning brief. Okay.
Thank you.
I think we need to move into deliberative executive session to take testimony on item 6A because it's a confidential matter, so there's a motion to move into executive session.
So you ask for a second?
I'd ask for a motion.
Oh, a motion. Sorry. I move that we move into executive session.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, let's move into executive session. Request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 2022-16. Do I have a motion from the body to move into deliberative session to consider our opinion on these items?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, let's go.
You are back on the record.
Okay, so we're back on the record and agenda item 6A, request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 2022-16. And I'm looking for a motion for us to request that Mr. Kelly put together a draft opinion addressing both of those requests in accordance with the discussion of the board while in deliberative session.
So move.
That's second.
You wrapped that up so
All in
nicely.
favor?
Yeah, aye.
Aye.
Terry's very in favor. All right, excellent. So we're all set on 6A. On 6B, we do not have the respondent available, right? Do we, to speak with us today? And so I think we need to continue that to a future meeting. Do we have a sense of the respondent's availability, whether we could do this at our next meeting in September?
The only dates that he was not available was, I think, on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay, so we should be fine. So let's, do I need a motion to move that to our next meeting?
I move that we table it for the next meeting.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, so item ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-17 is continued to the next meeting of the Board of Ethics. And so now, at this point, I believe we have the complainant in item 6D, or the requester for review, available on the phone. Is that correct?
Do you have a cell phone number?
Yes, I believe we do.
This is confidential. So should we go into executive session?
We should go into executive session as soon as we figure out if we actually have this person available.
Great point. Yeah.
Chris, do you have a cell phone
Oh, man.
number? I have it right there.
Okay, do we want to move into, so now we should move it, you have it, you're set, we think he's ready, so let's have a motion to move into executive session to take testimony on request for review pursuant to AMC 405065.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's go into executive here, was we wanted to better understand what, and here, this is one that's not confidential, right?
Are we moving the table?
Well, I think we should, I think we should move to table it until the complainant, materializes, because if he materializes in half an hour, like while we're still here in deliberation, we
yeah.
can talk to him today, and I'd like to move forward, but if he doesn't, then I think
Maybe not do anything.
maybe
until-
someone
let's
could
just-
craft I'm gonna go eat. Would you like to make a motion, Abram, that encapsulates this wishy-washy state that we're in?
Yes. I
Move to adjourn.
well, I move that we postpone.
Okay,
Talk,
until we're able to speak with the.
Oh yeah, we should table that.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to get all crazy.
yeah.
Robert's rules on you. We'll
Okay,
table,
I
not
move that we-
postpone.
Okay, I move that we table our conversation with the complainant until
Requestor, I think.
a requestor with the requestor until the requestor is able to contact us.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that is postponed until we're able to locate the requestor. And so now we're on to item 7B on the agenda. And so we can just refresh our recollection, and then Mr. Thurn should be with us shortly to answer our questions about that.
Oh yeah.
MOA funded duties. So it sounds like his concern is if there's money from the MOA that went to the Black Caucus, that he would then be accountable for like keeping track of.
What is his position here at the Muni?
That's what I'm not sure of. When I was here, he was managing the SAP project, and that was one of our questions. I asked, "What is Alden doing right now?" And I think everyone kind of gave me that face. So I think that was my number one question: was, "Alden, what do you do?"
Yeah.
He was acting.
He's the acting CFO.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Acting CFO.
Okay. Okay, so acting CFO. So then I had the question about what does he do in his role at the Muni? Because I don't think what he does at the Black Caucus, like that should be dictated by their rules, I think. It's really more about what official actions he might participate in here at the municipality.
I don't think we can dictate what ABC does.
We can dictate all things. What should you do at home?
Sure.
What should you eat for dinner?
Back to food again, huh?
We used to have snacks, that's all I have to say.
Back when the clerk's office carried it out.
It would require all witnesses to like bring food with them.
Oh my god.
I think that
would
raises
be
a conflict
hilarious.
issue. Like, what do you have to offer the board today? Oh, a cake?
Lattes? Excellent. Yes.
No violation.
Yeah.
Yes, it is absolutely not a contract we can support. You brought broccoli? Definitely a violation. Oh, there he is. We're ready for you now, for real.
Gave up hurrying long ago.
Thank you for your patience with us and
No problem.
returning for a
Is this
second
my
round.
turn?
That's for you
Perfect.
if you want it. Yeah. So we've met before, but I'm Becky McPherson, Chair of the Board of Ethics.
Patrick Teagarden.
Terry Kelly.
Abram Goodstein.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And so I think honestly our questions for you are relatively brief. We just had some clarifying questions into how your role, like what you're doing at the Muni, might potentially interplay with what you'd be doing at the Black Caucus, and it wasn't completely clear to us from the description. So that was really the focus of our questions and what we were hoping to get more information from you regarding. We understand that you're currently acting CFO, right? So, what comes to you as CFO? Like, what is your role? What official action might you perform as CFO that would impact the Black Caucus?
And remember, you waived confidentiality on it, so we are in open session.
Yes.
That's fine. Well, it's good that it's also some time has gone by because I've got a little bit more understanding of what their expectations or what their desires would be
Okay.
than anything else. They've asked to see if I'd be interested in being the volunteer treasurer. We have given significant grants to ABC through ARPA for the purchase of their facility a few blocks over. So I handle ARPA grants reporting for the Treasury and ultimately responsible for many of the departments that dole out that money and so forth. But I'm actually the person who submits the quarterly reports and annual reports to the U.S. Treasury on those particular grants.
Do you have a role when you say responsible for those grants? Do you have a role in making decisions, like yes or no? This, because we go back to kind of the definition of official action that would favorably or disfavorably impact an organization where you have a private interest. So if you,
The Assembly decided
The
that they
Assembly
were
makes
gonna-
the
that they were
decisions.
going to give them money.
okay,
Once but it's then my department's
You
job
administer it.
to administer it and send
But-
the money out to them and all those kinds
is
of
there
things.
any discretionary authority, like you can give them more or less, or like
No,
it's just ministerial? Is it? I guess I would say I think the code terminology is ministerial. Like you're directed to move money by the Assembly, and you're just responsible for making sure mechanically it's moved, or you have some.
I think that's correct. But
Okay.
on the back side of it, however, Because of the volume of money, they're required to do a single audit and report back to the city that the money was spent appropriately, and my job and my departments are required to take that information in and be able to make sure that the sub-recipients, that's what they're considered, spent the money appropriately. And should they have not, then I'm certainly involved in obtaining with legal advice to get that money back and do appropriate things with that. So I have more of administrative on the front end, but potentially on the back end, I also have to ensure that they did their audits correctly and so forth. So as the treasurer, their desire was to bring me on to do what I would call a lot of bookkeeping or bookkeeping assistance with regards to their QuickBooks kind of a thing, doing entries, cleaning up their books, doing any of their reconciliations, auditing, those kind of things, and then also working with their tax preparer and ultimate audit preparation people in preparing their annual audits. So my role here is on one side of it, but on the work that they were looking for me to help them with or assist them with was the actual detailed financial bookkeeping and accounting. Additionally, they are applying for other grants out there in the environment, and they would love to have somebody from the Muni in my job title to assist them in obtaining those particular grants. So that's more of a title-driven kind of a thing, but. They are, looking to get bigger and get more money and build out a facility and really be a larger player in the nonprofit, I think, area of Anchorage. So that's what they were asking initially. That's what the treasurer role that they have identified actually does. So that's the duties of that role, and then my current duties that I do with them. One other thing that I may or may not be involved in, which I do ultimately make a decision on if there's a problem, is it's my job on property tax exemptions. So nonprofits have the ability to apply for property exemptions and so forth if there's any. Those are normally dealt with by the municipal appraisal department. However, the CFO is required to do any exceptions and has final authority on making final decisions on that. So there could be opportunities from a property tax exemption basis where my active role would have some input or impact on something that they may be qualified for and for asking for in the future.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions.
So there's a variety of things. Anyway, I want to get on.
With the audit piece, does the CFO's office actually perform audits of grant recipients, or grant recipients pay an independent auditor and then the independent audit comes to the CFO's office for like a review of whether it's sufficient?
They do, and then we are supposed to be monitoring all these sub-recipients who got money from the municipality of Anchorage as a part of ARPA and as well as a part of all grant administration. So all of our grants are supposed to be that way. BDO, who is the auditor of the municipality of Anchorage, they then come in and ensure that they do a sampling, but they ensure that the municipality did its due diligence in gathering and ensuring the subrecipients performed all the duties of their contract, as well as if you're over $750,000, they have to do a single audit and so forth. So we have to ensure we're getting that information, and then our internal auditor would evaluate. Did we, as grant administrators, pass-throughs, do the appropriate administration of those subrecipient grants and so forth? Ultimately, as the CFO, I'm responsible for all of those type of things.
Can you effectively recuse yourself from the audit process of the Black Caucus? Like if they're part of it, what I hear you saying is that they have to do an audit of whether they spent the grants appropriately. Those come to the CFO's
The
team,
controller's department,
which is within the CFO's team,
Mhm.
and then those are approved or disapproved at some.
And if there's problems,
there's
then you have to
problems,
step in and go.
Then they're escalated to you.
Yes.
In that instance, say there's a problem, the Alaska Black Caucus audit is escalated to you. Can you effectively recuse yourself from that as CFO? What
We
would you
we
do?
have I think we'd have it both ways. I think we'd have the ability to limit the job duties that I would have that they could use me as the treasurer, but also there is rules where if I have conflict of interest as the CFO in anything, I can delegate that decision making to the public finance director or somebody else within the organization at that point in time.
Because I think
There are
you're,
procedures, there are processes and procedures in place for the CFO to delegate those kind of
I
responsibilities.
think whether or not you were involved in the audit, you'd still have the conflict if you were an officer of the organization being audited by the muni. But I think that the recusal is this, if there's a way to effectively do it. Okay. So then a question on the flip side, is there any confidential information you're privy to and your role at the muni that the Alaska Black Caucus would want you to rely upon in your role? Is like that
I would think things that
any
I know at
conflict
the city, there are always information that I'm available, that I know that might be beneficial to them. Like I said, I haven't done any of this yet. I'm
Yeah.
only speculating, but there are going to be many grants in the future that come up. I'm going to assume that this organization is going to continue to that's their major funding source. I think is as a nonprofit is grants. So I think they will always be applying for them. Whether the assembly has ultimate authority or whether those are grants, let's say that the mayor might dole out for community grants and so forth. I mean, I have a high level of, as you're aware, of knowledge of what's going on in the municipality of Anchorage. So there is information that I probably have that would benefit any nonprofit organization that might be interested in some of that information. I don't want to hold the Alaska Black Caucus as a negative. They're just trying to find somebody to help out. But I do have a lot of information about what goes on, mainly from a financial perspective.
Okay. And then I had a question about you said they want to have to use your have the use of your name and title in applying for grants. What do you mean by that?
Well, any nonprofit organization is trying to get money, and I do believe that when they ask for a list of who are the officers of the organization, some of those might be employed, some of them might be volunteer in this particular case. I do believe that it might be looked positively on the grantors of these grants that when they're trying to ensure, is this nonprofit a fiscally responsible, upstanding organization, when they have the treasurer of the organization being the CFO of the city, I think that brings an inherent level of trust in that organization. So, to see where I'm kind of going with that. They're not using me per se, but I do think that it's certain. Versus having somebody who's willing to give you $1 million and the person who's the treasurer is, I don't know, a bookkeeper for a tax entity, something like that. I do think that the CFO of the city does bring some credibility to any organization that I might be volunteering for.
Okay. Questions from?
Is this only a one question?
I know. I just talked about it.
No, just let her fire away until she's
Yeah.
done, and then we go. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll talk less.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the appearance and propriety, and so I guess my question is that, say, if a member of public doesn't understand maybe the nuances of local government, sees you as both like the CFO of the city and as the treasurer of ABC, and they're like, well, this seems like a total breach of public trust. Like, do you have a way of showing that you accused yourself from, say, this audit process? Like, do you have documentation that you can establish that shows that, like, look, like I recognize the problem, but here, allow me to show you my alibi, if you will. Let me show you.
If a decision came to the CFO that needed to be decided upon, and we'd probably do that via email or something to that effect that says on this particular topic. Normally, I'm not the first person, so it would run up through the organizations, like the property appraisal, municipal appraiser might bring it forward, or the controller might bring it forward, and so forth. They don't just come directly to me as the first level of decision making. We would have to have some course of action in there. I agree with you that would say, I have a conflict. and so forth. And as such, I'm not weighing in on this, and then I would delegate somebody to be able to do that. But I think we'd have to have something in writing. I think, but in absence of that, I think it would bring into that particular question. And conversely, I think there might be a challenge for any other nonprofits that, I look at myself and the departments, we try to make all decisions based on code and following through with that. I have seen that when you make it, that the nonprofits all talk to each other because they're all trying to get money and do that. I have seen them use themselves against each other when one got something and the other didn't, and then they try to argue why that entity got something, and then I've seen them elevate that up through the organization ultimately for a decision. So I wouldn't be surprised there'd be a little bit of that as well. But we would have to have a process in place to, on not just on this situation, but I have conflict of interest in just normal things that I have to always divulge and assign somebody else within the department to make those kind of decisions.
So we were suggesting earlier that you could have a nonprofit accuse you of favoritism because they didn't receive the grant.
Maybe not a grant, but property tax exemptions is an example.
Sure.
Yeah, I could see some of those happening. I mean, ultimately, I think the grant decisions are, the way that currently works is the mayor and the administration, of which I am a part of, says, here's how we want the grants to be awarded when money came in. Let's take ARPA, for example. Then it goes to the assembly, and then they just changed it all. And then they are the ultimate decision maker. But they're in the first part of it, if the assembly approved exactly what the mayor's team put together, then yeah, we were an active participant in deciding who should get grants and those kind of things. But ultimately, the assembly is the one that has to bless and okay those particular things, and they get lobbied by all of the parties as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does EBC have a property tax exemption right now?
They do.
Okay, so would there be active adjudication that you might be involved in whether or not they should have one, or is that because they have one already?
They have one already, which was actually done prior to my time.
Mm-hmm.
As I stated, there are other nonprofits that do not
Okay, got it.
and are not thrilled about certain things that happen.
Okay, got it. Terry?
Is there any other work that you would do as CFO that might in any way affect Alaska Black Caucus? I mean, because as Becky was saying, one of the things that's going to be tricky for us to untangle is if you become an officer of that organization, then by the ethics code, you are seen as holding the interests of that organization, not just in the specific work you do as treasurer, but the interests of that organization generally. As an officer, the expectations you would at least appear to have an obligation to be furthering the general interests of that organization. So is there anything else that you do as CFO that it could, as Abram was saying, it's like if it was on the front page of the paper, it'd be like, oh wow, I can't believe the CFO was involved in both of those things at the same time.
I've only been doing CFO for 4 months, so
Okay.
I don't know if I'm actually giving you things that have just come up in the 4 months these are all real life examples that I'm giving you right now without necessarily too many specifics. So I think I can't control the public, but I do think that people can spin things however they want for the benefit or the negativity of whatever they're trying to accomplish. Yes, I think the treasurer role from the organization, they want that person to be an active member, which I would understand, and actually somebody who's really beneficial to the organization and moves it forward, as they should for what they're doing. It's not going to be a position where it's figurehead type driven. There's a lot I think they want that person really involved actively in soliciting new grants, closing out grants, assisting and reviewing, like I said, all of the daily entries into the QuickBooks and so forth. It's a book. Now, I've recommended they do a separate bookkeeping company, and they're actually doing that right now. I think that helps a little bit. That was mainly because of workload, not because of conflict. Everyone's well aware that I haven't done anything because I told them I own this process, and we want it to all be above board, so we're not trying to hide anything here. But they've actually hired a bookkeeper right now just because of the volume of work. But I also expect they're going to be growing pretty significantly and that's their plan and their desire. And there could be the perception of many other nonprofits out there that if I'm not helping them, how am I helping that particular group? And if there are future grants that end up happening, did they get it based on the merit or versus something else? But that's all conjecture. But I can see that other entities might do that.
So there's grants. There's maybe the property tax decisions. Are there anything else that, as CFO of the city, would impact the interest of Alaska Black Caucus?
Not that I'm aware of at this particular point. They are looking for grants that are not MOA related. I don't necessarily see those as a conflict of interest. I think I might even wrote something like that in there. I mean, if they're getting a $400,000 grant from a company or an entity in California, the Muni's not having any direct involvement in that. The issue is that any Muni money and any other money ultimately gets rolled into their annual financials, which get audited. Because if you're a piece, you get that in there. If there are years where they don't have any Muni money that's come in, then on those particular years they might be in a situation where there's less opportunity for conflict at that point in time.
Right. Yeah, and there you might just need to be careful about, like, again, how your title gets used. If it's just that there's a bio, and in that bio it's listed, but to the degree, unlike an elected official, you are not allowed to use your municipal title in your private affairs, and so that's just something that we'll probably talk in the end. But that would be the only concern I would have about, as you're acting basically, as their chief financial officer, right? It's like that again, preventing the entanglement of your dual roles in that direction. That would be my worry there, is that, to the degree that the title becomes a more overt selling point. At a certain point, there's a tipping point where you're using, maybe inadvertently, maybe not you intentionally, right? Maybe it's just the way the website's being set up, but that the sort of, as I like to say, sort of like the trappings of your office, right? The capital of your position, which is really owned by the municipality, not you, right? Is now being used for one particular private group.
And they're not trying to do anything. I want to be real clear here. They've had a hard time finding somebody who has volunteer time with finance background to be able to volunteer their time to do it. They're not trying to circumvent anything. They saw an opportunity, and I'm more than happy to help if allowed, to be able to participate this.
Well, and I certainly get your point. Nonprofits, companies generally want people with that kind of cash.
Yeah,
and to the degree that it's in your bio and it's easily, that's obviously one thing. Certainly a bio can talk about your position with the municipality. I would just say, that would be my concern, is to the degree that there will be a line somewhere, right? And it'll be hard to see, maybe, right? But there will be a line where at a certain point that title is being used in a way that might begin running afoul.
But I do believe they use I do believe they try to put the bio out there for, and these grant applications, as you know, are normally pretty extensive documents. You have to provide a lot of financials. People are giving you money. They want to make sure the money's not, just like I'm giving money to the nonprofits. I would like that they not, unfortunately, or spend it inappropriately. So I think any of these entities are looking to make sure that the money that they donate to to any organization is going to use it in the manner and effectively to benefit whatever they're trying to accomplish. So I think that's always the goal. We have a couple ARPA ones right now. We would love to get that money back, and they're in the news constantly. So I wish we wouldn't have probably sent them that money.
Right. I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you.
just trying to be above board.
Oh, absolutely.
No, absolutely.
And-
Appreciate it.
and-
Very,
and-
very good
and-
question. Yeah.
They saw me as an opportunity because my significant other is African American, so I have a vested interest in trying to see the organization do well and move forward. And I certainly have a background that would be beneficial for them and their needs and so forth. So.
Absolutely, and I think we're a volunteer board, so probably we will realistically have an opinion together in the next month. I don't know how that works with your timing. I would say we could offer. I don't know the board. I feel like we could offer the general advice. I don't think that this is in any way a non-starter, but there will be some parameters that involve recusal from anything that concerns the Black Caucus and avoiding potential misuse of the title and being mindful of information that may be municipally confidential in your role, like things like that. I think we would expect in our opinion, but I don't think that the pendency of the opinion should hold you back from a decision. Just expect that there will be some.
And just so everyone knows, they've hired a bookkeeper, so I'm not having to do that right now. So there's time to do that. That bookkeeper's getting the stuff ready for the audit, which is an external person in Wasilla. So I don't see anything there. The other money entity is coming up on the 31st and they would love for me to be there to showcase myself. So if that's something that I shouldn't go to in advance of your decision, maybe an email to me saying we would suggest you not be there until a formal decision is made would be helpful, and then I would not go. But August 31st is that other grantor is coming up here to make their final, make sure everything's good and looking good.
Okay.
So,
We can take that. Well, let's take that under advisement, and we'll make sure we circle back to you.
all right, great. Thank you all. Nice to meet you all.
Good to meet you. Thanks for your time.
This was my safe time for the day when nobody was looking for me.
All right. Well, so should we move directly into deliberation on 2023-2 since we're here and it's fresh and that's we're open session and this confidentiality was waived, and then we can go back to, I think we still have request for advisory opinion 2023-1 to consider before we conclude the meeting today with a new request for advisory opinion, and then everything else appears to have been moved to our next meeting unless our request or in item 60 materializes before the end of the meeting. Does that sound fine? Should we continue with deliberations? Okay.
Yeah. I move to go to deliberative session.
We don't think we need to because this is
It's
usually
not
confidentiality.
confidential, yeah.
Oh, I thought you said.
Well, I mean, we still might,
I thought you said right at the
for-
beginning.
for deliberations, we
Should
might
we?
want to,
Okay.
if people want to, but
that's
I think
the will of the
we
body.
can. I think we have even though the confidence is to waive, the deliberative process can
Okay.
still.
Yeah. I move to go to deliberative session.
Second.
I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to deliberative session. Draft an opinion of the board in accordance with the discussion held in deliberative session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I would just on the record request that staff let Mr. Thorne know that he should await the opinion from the board before participating in any joining the board or participating in any way in board activities with the Black Caucus, and also request that staff provide Mr. Teagarden with the 2021-09 and the previous board opinion regarding the CFO's joint board role. Is that clear enough?
Yes, and
Okay.
I can contact Alden.
Okay, that is all I got. So then we're back to
Just like if you check out their website, their bylaws are on their website, defines the treasurer position. So.
oh,
Becky, I just had an email from the complainant for item 6D too.
yeah.
So he is available to take a call now if the board wanted to take that up.
Do we want to? We have 7 minutes, and I unfortunately have a hard stop at 4:30 today. Or would you rather continue that until our next meeting?
I think we should table it to our next meeting.
Okay, let's table it to our next meeting and see if we can get through the item 6D,
Now we'll postpone.
not 6C.
Oh, postpone's the correct
Now
terminology.
we'll postpone to the next meeting.
And when do I use table? When do I use postpone?
Table means you set it aside until the body votes to bring it back. So it can be brought back at any time, including the very meeting where you tabled it.
Cool.
Postpone means it's really been
Gone.
Now we have
postponed. It's
6
gone.
And
minutes.
you unpostpone.
Yeah, but that was a minute less.
Not only do you have to
All
unpostpone
right,
it, you
all right.
have to revise the agenda, right? So
Item
you'd need
16.
several motions.
Do we
Now,
wanna
you
go-
could split the motions.
Do we want to go into deliberative session on this one or no, Terry?
Yes.
Okay, I hear that a motion from Terry to go into deliberative session.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor? Yes.
Yay,
All right, deliberative
aye.
session. Thank you, team.
There we go.
You're in open session.
Back in open session on the item 6C, request for advisory opinion 2023-01, looking for a motion that requests that I, Becky Wynn Pearson, put together a draft opinion in accordance with the discussion of the group in deliberative session. Do I have such a motion?
So move.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, so that is that. We will all endeavor to have our draft opinions back in time for next month's meeting,
Which is when? Did we figure that out?
which I think we need to figure out as our last. I see that and we do have an item 7C that we did not get to, so do we need a motion to postpone that or until next, or is it automatically roll over? Okay, excellent. So then our last agenda item is the fall schedule. And I would love it if we could set a fixed date that we think we could make. Admittedly, that it will change at some point because again, I don't anticipate being reappointed. So
There are a lot of high holidays coming up, so just FYI, a couple of. Most of them are actually on the weekend this year, which is nice.
So could we do? We have been doing this Thursday. For me, the first or the. Let's see here. I think the first or the third Thursday of the month are the best for me. If I could do September 21st.
September 21st. Ooh.
And then like October 19th, I could do.
September 21st is during what's called the Days of Awe, but I'm actually available.
Okay, does that work for?
The main hang up for me, remember, is I teach until 2:15, so I could get here probably like 2:45 would be.
Can we do 3 to 5 on the 21st?
Oh boy, I don't know. Shoot.
And also, the other question is, at some point, should we turn this into an evening board session? I mean, we have traditionally met during the day, but scheduling has proven enormously difficult.
We've got children.
Yeah.
You said September 21?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the calendar. It's some what we said.
21st from 3 to 5. Does that work?
So far, it's clear. So let's just do it.
Oh, you know, I probably can't do Thursdays either.
At all. Okay. So we were on Mondays or Fridays. Was that
I
where
could
we were?
do Tuesdays
I
at
can't
3 or
I can't do Mondays at all. Mondays are
okay, Mondays are out.
Mondays are my only weekend
I
day.
can do Thursday.
It's not doing Mondays.
So I could do Tuesday afternoons, Wednesday, or Friday. That's where we were last time. I think we were talking about Fridays, right? Because it
Yeah,
wasn't
because
summer
Tuesday
anymore.
afternoons are generally very bad for me.
And they've got assembly meetings, right, on
Yeah, on
Tuesday.
Tuesdays,
That's
yeah,
right.
so
That's
we're
what
on
they're saying, right?
Fridays.
So that's what we were
Could
talking
we do
Fridays last time.
Friday? I can't do the 29th of September. I could do
What time on Fridays?
22nd at noon.
26.
Oh, that would be possible. Yeah, the 22nd of September.
Yeah.
We also usually have work sessions, so we'd have to be up here if we meet in person on Fridays.
Being here is fine.
Unless you want to do virtual, that's also an option.
I think when we have this substantial number of witnesses, it's good to do in
Oh,
person.
yeah, that was
but-
nice. Yeah, right.
Okay, so
22nd's good by me.
at noon. You said.
Yeah, or I could do 11 as well. I have a standing meeting at 2 that I have to be at.
You know, the earlier for me, the better on Friday.
Would it be possible to do
Is
at
it possible to
11?
do
It's
11?
good
Yeah.
too.
That work for you,
Fridays are
Patrick?
pretty-
I'll do that.
Okay, let's do 11 to 1 on Friday the 22nd. All right,
Right on.
we stand adjourned. Any motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.